Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Page Chewing Comics and Manga Pick of the Week. This is episode number 36. I'm Mike, and I'm here with my friend Steve, and we've got a really nice episode today. If you're joining us for the first time, we're two guys getting back into comics after a long hiatus. So before we get started, I thought I would ask you how you've been doing, Steve.
Good. I think last week we were both suffering from our illnesses, and we're both still a little suffering from our illnesses. Just stubbornly doesn't want to go away.
Yeah.
But no, doing good. I think we had a fairly good week. We had, one stinker, but we'll get to that. And we'll get to that. But yeah, I think, and I wondered as you were reading off as you were doing the introduction, if at what point can we say that we're getting back into comics? At what point can we say we got back into comics? I wonder, when is that line drawn? Because we are on 36. Maybe at 50, we'll reevaluate.
In my case, I feel like I'm still learning.
Oh yeah.
So I'll actually talk about that in the third comic I think that we covered today.
Oh, cool.
Because I felt so lost.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh,
and I don't mind admitting it. I don't care. This is a fun hobby, and I think there's so much you can uncover. In some cases, it's new authors or artists, I'm even learning about. I have one comic today that's like from a really small press that I never heard of. So I think, I don't mind being in a constant state of learning, even at my age. It doesn't bother me, actually, but I do agree with you. Maybe we will feel more like veterans further along. But you started the podcast earlier, so.
Yeah, I mean, I live in the perpetual state of not knowing what the hell is going on. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's nothing new for me. I don't know what's going on, but we'll make the most of it, have some fun.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I like that attitude, honestly. So the first one I have is it's not new by any stretch of the imagination. It's called Almost Dead, issue number 1 by Ablaze, and for some reason I must have pulled this off the rack of comics that were like not so new. So I thought it was new. I believe this may have even come out end of last year. So Steve and I, you and I were talking before that we hit record, and it sounds like you might have even covered it. So the cover, I should say this: the main author is Galaxy, with art by Ryan Benjamin, and it's from Ablaze. So the cover screams zombie horror, and sure enough, that's what we get. The main character, Sarah, returns home from some airport trip, and she seems perpetually confused that there is some sort of zombie apocalypse happening. And she also has a moment where she kind of like hits her head, and she's just very clueless about what's happening even further on into the 15 pages or so into the story, up until almost the very end here. I would say the artwork is okay, but the writing just really did not do it for me. There's even a case here where they describe that a flashback's happening that you don't really need to say. I think unless it's written for a very young audience, I really don't think you need to tell the reader. There's a lot of interesting, maybe backstory going on, but about her upbringing or who her father was, but it just, I'm sure it doesn't do. I don't know if it does anything different from other zombie stuff that's out there. I think you said maybe it's like Walking Dead, but for me, I think this is already in issue 5, but I'm not gonna. I don't plan to continue with this one.
Yeah, when you mentioned the title, I thought I remembered it, and then I went and looked, found the cover, and was like, oh yeah, okay. On this one, the main character, it's like, is so oblivious to the world falling apart around her that so if you make that creative choice of saying this character has no idea what's going on, why? Like, what does it, how does that serve the story? What does it do for the story? Why make her so oblivious? What's the creatively, what's the why would you do that? I remember it just felt like it was very, I don't trust the reader to know this is a flashback, so I'm going to explicitly tell you this is a flashback because you're too dumb to know on your own.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I remember that issue.
And I also think like the main character, like there's her name is, I think, Sarah. It's, she keeps going out of consciousness. It's another thing where I'm like, it didn't really work for me. I'm not understanding where you're going with that either. But anyway, it was a choice. I'm not saying it was a choice that worked for me, though.
Oh, it was a choice, all right. Yeah, it was a strange one. I'm a sucker for zombie stories, but yeah, this one just, I realized when you mentioned it, I looked it up. I was like, I've been trying to forget this one for a while.
And I have to admit, I have never watched Walking Dead, not one episode. I've not read the comic either. And I'm not saying that there's any reason, but it's hard to, maybe hard to believe because there's so much already out there.
The unpopular opinion, the TV show really took a dive after season 1, and
oh wow,
and seasons 4 up really fell off for me. Mm-hmm. The books I read until issue 120 or so, and then I just kind of fell off of it. There's some great arcs in the book, though. Okay. Really, I've been thinking about rereading them because there are some really great sections in the book that really impactful moments that I still remember reading. That was like shocking, but yeah, good stuff. Yeah. I'm not sure how it ended, but I remember it being pretty good. I was just Walking Dead. It was everywhere for a while there, and yeah. I just had enough of it. I just couldn't do it anymore. But so for me, the first one this week is Charred Remains #4 by Mad Cave Studios. This issue felt like a transitional issue. It's building story and background on our characters and our villain or villains. It feels the story is it's growing in scope. There's more. Now that we learn more about the villain or potential villain, I guess it seems bigger. It seems like there's more. There's more history than I anticipated, and I like that. Again, the art fits. I say this every time I read this book. The art fits. It seems like it's on fire, like it's smoldering, like it's steaming. It just feels, it fits the tone very well, and it feels the story is going more towards a horror, leaning more into horror, and it is also leaning more into like a slasher type of story. And I'm not big on slashers, but so far it's keeping me pretty interested. I'm growing more and more attached to the characters, to their 2 main characters, and I think there's some potential here, so I'll continue reading it.
Yeah, I read the first one, but for whatever reason, I didn't continue. So I'm now along for the ride. I think I'm just going to hear how it works out, and if you like the full, maybe if there's a full volume that gets produced, then I might end up picking it up.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'd recommend the trade yet, the collected, but it's close. It's good.
Okay, so next up for me, this is going to go by quick because Steve already covered it and I think we talked about it a little bit, but I had to try and see what I thought about Spawn 350. First of all, I have a beautiful variant cover that's black and white by McFarlane. That's just I don't know, that it might be worth something at one point. It's just gorgeous, and so that was one of the reasons I went for it. So I have to admit, I think I said a long time back, I watched the HBO show like many years ago.
90s.
Probably in the
Late
90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's quite a while, and I have not picked it up since then. So I just like the cover. I think the artwork is stupendous and just very colorful, and some gruesome characters here. But apart from Spawn and the clown character, I did not know anybody else. So I don't even feel qualified to comment on it much more than that. I know kind of what's happening in the story, and I saw what happens in the end. But generally, I think there's too much backstory that I just don't know about to want me to move forward onto 351. But I'm intrigued enough to possibly go way back, and I would love to cover even the Alan Moore run. At least go that far. I'm not sure which issues, which numbers those were, but I know that he was writing for Spawn for a little while there. But I as I mentioned, I was just a little too lost. So if there's somebody who is trying to jump in, maybe brand new, do you think, like, if they don't know anything, I'm wondering if now that you are into this 351, does it maybe make more sense? It's kind of a question for you, Steve.
Yeah, I think for someone who comes in completely green would be confused. I think it's one of those, because I think I read up to issue 70s or 80s.
Okay, yeah.
So I know a little bit of the background. I've dipped in and out through the years and read an arc here and there that I was told was good or that was worth reading. So I kind of have an idea. There's a lot of characters I don't know, but this one I'm just kind of just going along for the ride.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the characters I don't know who they are, but I think I know the clown and Wanda and Al, even though he looks different now. I'm not sure why. So just kind of seeing where it goes. But
okay.
It's I can see how it would be confusing because I was confused with it too, but I wouldn't mind going back to issue 1 and rereading it.
Yeah, I picked up a reissue of the number 1 somewhere, and it was 99 cents, I think. For some reason, I think it was some promotional thing.
Oh, cool.
But I seem to have misplaced it.
Of course. Yeah. It is. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's one of those where you just kind of go along for the. I guess I kind of take the approach of I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but I'm hoping it will eventually make sense.
Okay.
But, yeah. Spawn's just a cool character.
Definitely.
Yeah. My second book this week is The Six Fingers issue 2. Not to be confused with The One Hand. So the mystery deepens in this one, and I now know how this and The One Hand overlap. I talked about The One Hand last week. I picked up that issue in accident thinking it was this series, but it's actually, they do overlap in this one. The storylines do, so I thought that was pretty neat. I think it's a pretty neat idea to have the stories overlap the way it did, to see the different perspectives of each character on each side of this mystery. We do learn about the character. We do learn about dreams and kind of their past, and still don't know what's going on with our main character, why these things are happening, if they're actually doing these horrific things, or if they're imagining things of someone else's, or something else is taking advantage of our main character, making them do bad things. We just see the before and after. We don't really see what happens during these horrific events. So I really like the art. I think the art's really great. I'm intrigued. So this one was close to being my pick of the week. Just missed it. But overall, pretty solid. I'm on board with this one and the One Hand.
I tried to look it up, but is this the same author as the One Hand?
That's a great question. You find out.
Okay, it sounds like kind of similar to what's going on in this other. In some ways, it's like another shared universe or whatever, which is happening with the Geiger character, and then quite a few others, which is being like released this current week. In some ways, but I don't think it's in the same universe.
Now, is there actually two different creators? I think for the One Hand, it's Lawrence Campbell and Ram V, and for the Six Fingers, it's Sumit Kumar and Dan Waters. But I'm sure they are collaborating somehow to have the stories overlap. But yeah, I think it's a really neat idea, and it does seem contained, or at least the shorter runs, so it doesn't seem like there's this big universe and decades of continuity to keep up with. So, yeah, I think I'm on board with it.
Okay. So this up next for me is The Deviant, which is by Tinian, and this is issue number 4. I think this actually came out a little while ago, so I was hesitant to pick this one back up for some reason. I think when I saw it on the shelf, I was just not in the mood, maybe. But it's a good story, and this issue to me boosted my hopes for continuing with the series. We have Michael, who's the main character, and I don't know if it's been a while. I'll just quickly summarize that he's a comic book writer who's interviewing like a serial killer, and he seems to be kind of really getting in depth and investigating what has happened a long time ago in Milwaukee, of all places. And I mention that because there is a reference to Jeffrey Dahmer, and when I was young, I remember those days. As somebody from that part of the world, it sticks in my mind. So he continues to interview. Michael continues to kind of question this serial killer who's in prison, but at the same time, we learn about his home life. And wow, this one made you start to wonder: is he an unreliable narrator? Because there was quite an ending to this one, but at the same time, he is also in some serious trouble. So you're kind of thrown for a loop as a reader, and this could be maybe a climax issue, and I'm really curious to see what happens next. I don't want to give it away, but it was quite a spin or twist at the end there.
Huh. Do you know how many more issues we have in this series?
Yeah, I don't know. What's interesting is that this is called A Christmas Story, and I think it did come out like originally back in November or December. Mm. So I wonder, I get the sense that it's maybe only going to have one more, but I can't, I'd have to go back and see. I can't tell. How some of these, they say 5 of 6 or 3 of 4 or whatever. This one doesn't say that right on the cover or anything.
Yeah, I think it was like a 5 or 6 issue miniseries. So
okay,
should be wrapping up. I would assume it'd wrap up soon.
Yeah, I did want to comment on the artwork. The coloring is really is really impressive. There's there'll be a few pages where it's very red or purple, and then like the scene where he's interviewing this killer in prison is very kind of yellow and drab, and so it's got a. I've come to appreciate that even more.
I wonder if it would have been better to start this series so it would finish around Christmas, or if it was better to start around Christmas because that's the first issue. That's when you want to get people interested in and kind of get your hooks into them for the series. But now that it's finishing in springtime almost.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of.
I mean, one of the other main kind of evil killer type of character is like a, kind of like a Santa Claus figure. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it's not so seasonal right now.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, I guess that's the danger of releasing something that has a seasonal theme, a specific seasonal, like a day, I guess, Christmas. But yeah.
Exactly.
Interesting. So my next one is the Ultimate Spider-Man #3. This one, it's just fun. It's lighthearted, fun. It's easy. It's like a comfort food. I do like that in this version of Spider-Man, Peter isn't a teenager. He's a 30-something with a family who's just kind of finding his way. The art, I think it again, it just fits the style and tone very well. It's very neat and clean, has a cartoonish feeling to it, but again, that's just kind of the style that we're going for with the story. I do hope that they don't just rehash things that were happening in the main Spider-Man title, like in this issue, spoiler alert, because it's on the cover, the Green Goblin's in this one, and I hope they don't go the same direction that we've gone before with the Green Goblin. I hope there's some variations in the story, and not just a chance to retell the same things over and over again. I hope there's big differences in story that we can kind of play around with things and not take the opportunity to have an Ultimates, separated alternate universe with just the same thing over again. Like, I hope we do something different. And I really hope so, because I hope it's just not a retelling. I can just go back and reread some books. I don't have to do that again. So that's my only hope for this one. But like I said, it's just fun. It's like lighthearted fun.
yeah, when you say Spider-Man is a bit older, is he like middle-aged, or just out of curiosity?
I think he's in his 30s,
okay.
And he has a couple of kids, and he's with Mary Jane.
Oh, wow.
He's kind of like the typical, married to 2 kids, just living the new life kind of thing. Yeah. And I find that to be more interesting than a kid who gets bitten by a radioactive spider.
Yeah, I think we both have said that we're not always like big fans on real young characters. And that, when I read Spider-Punk, that is the way that's skewed. So that was very much like teenager.
Yeah.
Or even I could see it appealing to tweens or whatever even.
Yeah, not my cup of tea for sure.
So I'm gonna next I'm gonna talk about a series that I've really been enjoying, and that's the Holy Roller, which I think I mentioned before. There's a couple authors. One is Rick Remender, and so I've been enjoying a few of his titles. And this is issue number 5. So this, I think he used the term earlier where this could be like a transitional issue, but there was also, I've been enjoying it because this this series is pretty funny, and it has some decent action. It's got quite a mix of humor that has been working for me in general. And I've even laughed out loud. In this issue, not as much. I think in the first few pages I loved. So the main character, who's this bowling superhero that uses bowling balls, and busts people's heads with them or whatever. He's got a friend who, like, we see him as, he's like, I don't want to be the sidekick. I know what's going to happen to me, and then he like imagines himself as like the pin pal, and it was hilarious. So just to give you a little snippet here, I do really appreciate the humor sometimes. So there was one sequence in here that just, to me, I guess it's taking a risk or whatever. it's okay, but it really went for the Adolf Hitler stuff. Like he's kind of like appears as an AI version, and is there's these underground neo-Nazi people that are trying to promote him. And it just didn't work for me that well. Maybe another day, or I don't know. It just was too much screen time for this character of the past. Which I mean it's fine. I just didn't. I liked what they were doing earlier. Maybe I think this is trying to set something up for the future. But that section was followed by an intense, fast-paced fight sequence that was pretty good and kind of brought me back to what I was enjoying. And this is another case where I had kind of a twist ending as well. So I'm still in this one. I'm along for the ride. But there was just a scene in here that just wasn't really doing it for me.
Huh.
Too on the nose.
Yeah, that's a problem. Especially in humor in books like that is kind of over the top. Yeah, it's when it's too on the nose, it kind of takes away the charm and the humor in it.
But we'll see how that continues. I'm curious. So.
Yeah, hopefully it gets back on track. But I have noticed that you mentioned as a transitional. I did notice that issue 4 and 5 in a lot of the series that I'm reading seems like it kind of a transitional thing. I think they try to clean up some of the story when they have to start off fast to get the readership, and then they kind of start to tighten things up a bit in the later issues. I wonder if that's kind of a formula that they follow or some creators follow.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense especially if it's 6 issues, it's setting up for a big splash finale in some cases, I guess. Yeah.
So this week was kind of tough. I didn't really have I thought they were all the books I read were fine. I didn't really have what I didn't like, but I had a hard time choosing a pick of the week because nothing really stood out to me. Like they were all fine, but nothing really I thought was great. But it's pick of the week, so I got to pick something, I guess. So my pick this week was Napalm Lullaby #1. This is a book that Mike you just got. I think it was last week or the week prior. I think it was your pick too.
Yep.
And after I heard you talk about it, I went out and grabbed it. This one I'm not quite sure what's going on. There's a lot of things happening. When it started off, it starts off as I thought it was going to be a Superman retelling, like an alternate version of Superman, and really curious to see how that was going to go. If it was going to be like an evil Superman or a different, like he was going to be a god. Don't know. We don't know yet. And when we do find the other characters, things happen and then they don't really happen. There's some trickery going on, some fuckery, if you will.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think all that was very intriguing for me. I'm curious to see where this is going to go. It's a Rick Remender book, so that helps a lot too, knowing that the creator is, for me, someone who I enjoy reading. So yeah, Illusions, is it mind control? Is it a dystopian world? I don't know, but I'm going to be here to read it. So all in all, it was a fun time. I think it advertises this as a double-sized issue, but it didn't feel like a double-sized issue. It felt like a normal size, and I'm not sure if that was because I enjoyed it so much that I didn't notice. But yeah, Napalm Lullaby #1, definitely on this one, on this hype train for the series.
Yeah, great. I'm happy to hear when I like something and then somebody else also appreciates it for similar reasons. I totally missed the Superman, intro, but that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I think it's almost like there's several totally different storylines going on, and you don't really know how they're going to converge. So the next issue could go in any number of directions.
Yeah, well, I think when you have too many bonkers ideas, there's a danger of having too many weird things too many unexplained things to start off with. So, but again, it's for Remender, so I have faith.
Yeah. So, coming up for me, this is a case where I had absolutely no idea what I was getting into. So, through my library, I'm able to get access to online comics, and this is a case where it looked like a not so well known author and a not so well known publisher, and so the title is, and I don't know if I'm saying it right, is Viscera Objectica. And I know that viscera means guts, so I thought it might have been like a horror novel or something. And the author, and he's also the artist, is Hugo Limbo. And this is by Silver Sprocket Comics. And they're, as I mentioned, a small independent publisher, and I think they're based out of San Francisco. So that was one of the things that I was like, I'd like to get into some things that maybe aren't as well known. And this is just kind of a one and done issue. I think it's maybe 70 pages or so. And the artwork is just really different. It's kind of almost what I would maybe describe a 1920s or 1930s kind of European or French inspired look. But it's not a superhero story. It's not really a horror story either. It's about a man who's he's like a tailor, and he falls in love with this inanimate object, which is a doll. And it's kind of his story. It's very different. You kind of think it's going somewhere strange, but it doesn't really. I forgot to mention that it's black and white, which actually doesn't bother me. There are cases in history where people, and this is kind of featured at the end, where the author is kind of explaining himself a little bit. But there are people in history that have fallen in love with objects, and they felt more comfortable with objects for whatever reason. And they give an example of a woman who married the Eiffel Tower. And there is a phenomenon, I guess. But this just doesn't fit anywhere easy in any kind of genre, really. It's I guess, on this kind of spectrum, I suppose. And I don't even know why I went for it, but I just wanted to try something different. It's hard for me to call it a pick of the week, but it just because it was so different, and I think if you're into something that's just a bizarre story, or maybe not bizarre, because you might start to think, well, it's nothing really wrong with that per se, but that is what goes on here, and it was a good read for me.
Huh. Nice.
Yeah, and I don't mind reading stuff that's like kind of just dramatic and doesn't really. It's just kind of like an exploration. It doesn't have to have like a. And I hated to say that there wasn't any plot or whatever, because there is a plot. It's just not like, these like dramatic shifts or changes or whatever. A little bit predictable in some ways, but it's fine.
Huh. Yeah, it does have a 20s or 30s or even like French or European style artwork, but it's eye catching. You're not used to seeing that, so it stands out.
Definitely, and I'm hoping to try to see if I can feature other things like this if I can. As I'm learning, I'm gonna see what I can do to cover independent stuff more and more.
Nice. Who would you recommend this for?
Great question.
Or two.
I don't know. Like, I think if you, gosh, I don't. I think if you're open to different ways of, I guess different, ways of falling in love with in this case, it's not a human. If that's something that has ever appealed to you, this might work for you. I think if you're open to kind of like alternative lifestyles or whatever, if you will, that would appeal to you as well. Good question. I wish I had thought about it more.
Yeah. No, just for someone listening, who would enjoy this kind of thing? Who would like it? But, yeah, all in all, great week. I think we just had one stinker, which isn't bad, really. I think the rest were pretty good. I think Holy Roller wasn't a strike, I guess, but still okay.
Yeah,
wah.
It wasn't a complete gutter either.
Yeah, yeah. So there you go. Yeah, maybe we'll pick up the spare on that one. And the other ones were okay. I mean, not too bad.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, pretty good week. But awesome. So we'll be back next week to tell you all about what we read next week. And we'll see if we can catch it. If you'd like to catch up with one of us or both of us, you can find us both on PageStewing on the forums. Go ahead and register there. I will approve your membership if you're not a bot or a weirdo. If you're a weirdo, I still will. Just come and say hello. Come and talk comics with us. We are reading Where the Body Lies. We're going to be discussing that soon. We did start Blame, the manga Blame, and that's been interesting. And we have other stuff planned in the future. So come by and say hello and join us and tell us how wrong we are. We'd love to hear from you. So until next time, we'll talk to everyone very soon. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.